Fort Worth Masonic Military Podcast, exploring the deep connection between our craft and the military. Our opinions are our own and do not represent any lodge or Grand Lodge.
Welcome back to the podcast, brothers. This is the Fort Worth Military Podcast, where we explore the intersection between the military and Freemasonry and the brothers who have served or are currently serving. My name's Evve Kuykendall, and I am the Senior Deacon for Fort Worth 148.
Sean Baun, Junior Deacon for Fort Worth 148.
And you might have heard us in the past on our other podcast endeavors with Fort Worth 148, but now they've cut us loose and given us our own podcast to muck up around. So get ready and buckle up, boys. We're going to have some fun. So today we're going to be talking about just letting you guys know who we are, where we're coming from, and what we're going to be doing on this podcast as we move forward. Letting you know a little bit about us and our background so that it makes sense when you listen. So I'll let Sean start.
All right. So like I said, Junior Deacon here at Fort Worth 148. I've been a Master Mason for only coming up on my 1-year anniversary. So baby, brand new Master Mason.
But a Freemason for several, 2 years now? 3?
Since you were 2019. So I was initiated in 2019 and then got caught up in the pandemic and delayed as an apprentice due to the pandemic. So October of 2019 initiation, and then Master Mason in May of 2021. So yeah, and that kind of made my journey to Master Mason very interesting and probably somewhat unique for the class of brothers who came up in the same time frame as I did.
Yeah, because we during that time period, we probably had 7, 8 at any given time kind of coming through the lodge initiation process. And our process is already long as it is. So
right,
you got the extra long version of it.
Yeah, and there was about 7 of us. Interestingly, though, I was the only veteran in that group, which I found to be somewhat surprising, but that's how it turned out. So I'm a veteran of the United States Marine Corps, infantry, 0331 MOS, or military occupational specialty for those that aren't unfamiliar with the vernacular. Heavy machine guns was my job. And I enlisted pre-September 11th, 2001. So I was already in when that went down. And that was kind of a wrench in the cog, so to speak, for my life plan. But, I enlisted, I think, probably with a similar idea of most people, which is go in, do my time and my duty of service to the nation, and then get something in return, right? Get to enjoy some med floats, as we call them, or Mediterranean deployments for travel, and then some college benefits through the GI Bill or whatever else was available at the time. And then 9/11 happened shortly after I enlisted, and really just kind of changed everything from there. And then I, being infantry in the Marine Corps and throughout that time, and I was in from 2001 to 2009, obviously got my chance to do a couple of combat deployments, serving in Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, Afghanistan, and also some time in Africa and the Philippines and other combat theaters as well, fighting the war on terror. So that all being said, I was interested and wanted to be a Freemason prior to that, all the way back to high school. And just due to circumstance and other things, didn't do it until 2019. There was always some obstacle or something that prevented it from taking place at the time. When I got out of the military, I went to work for the railroad, and I was like, okay, now's the time. I'm out. I'm married now, and I'm gonna go work for the railroad and be able to pursue masonry. And then I got a job where I was traveling 6 days a week, every week of the year. So it still didn't work out. And it wasn't until almost 8 years into the railroad life that I was able to sit down and be able to visit the lodge frequently. And my hometown is Fort Worth. So being at Fort Worth Lodge when I was born, a couple blocks away at the hospital was pretty important to me. So, but the military historical part of Masonry was always what piqued my interest, had that part of my brain that wants to know more and just wants to dive in and go down a rabbit hole and find out everything that they could. And then that was already there when I was young, because I was a pretty big history geek as a kid. And then when I got in the Marine Corps, the Marines, I think maybe a little different from every other service, is really focused on their history, both throughout basic training and then kind of the way we carry around our pride of being Marines and talk about our history in the Corps and with everybody we meet all the time. That's what we do. Follows us.
I can attest to that.
But there's so much, with the founding of the United States, the founding of the Navy and the Marine Corps, and obviously the founding fathers and Masonry being involved there. Tun Tavern was where the Marine Corps was founded in 1775, believed to be Lodge number 1, I guess what they would call Philadelphia Lodge number 1. Little unclear on the research there, but what I've been able to find out is that the Samuel Nichols was the first commissioned Marine officer, and allegedly he was either an officer or the worshipful master of that lodge at that time in 1775 when the Marine Corps was founded, by other Masons, obviously George Washington and the rest of them. So learning all of those things just made it worse. It gives you the itch, and then you got to go and find it all out. So, and then, being able to travel the world, I wish that I could have been a master Mason already when I was doing that traveling. But even the things that I saw then and my understandings of Masonry now, being able to connect those dots and see those trails of history and both physical location and the stories that go along with them for Masonry of all the places I visited is super surreal, I guess would be the best word to say. And then now I get to a point where I feel like, you make Master Mason and you start to connect all these things, but in reality, all you're actually doing is like dipping your pinky toe into the water of all the vast amounts of things there is to know and read and learn about our history.
I mean, like our brethren on the other podcasts who explore the esoteric side, I mean, there's so much to learn over there. And then we over here get to really dive into the history and the intersection of military and all of those like things that happened and are kind of still happening.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like history is completely detached from what we're talking about now in modern Freemasonry. A lot of the things that Masonry used to be and the military used to be are still part and parcel of what we're doing today.
Definitely. And I think that we're seeing this is anecdotal to be sure, but it seems like to me that there's a lot of Masons who are my age, and I'm in my late 30s, or younger, that are showing up more now. And there's been a lot of talking amongst Freemasons, amongst other people about what's driving that, whether it's an esoteric thing, a need for that, the mysteries, the search for the mysteries, the rite of initiations in Western culture. Even our podcast in the past has done a talk about that. And I think they're all true. I think they're all right. And I think that
I think a lot of people look for for either or observations as opposed to yes and.
Yeah, yes
it's
and,
not
right.
just one of these things. I think it's the constellation. I think you're right on that.
But the geopolitical climate now, without getting far afield into that topic, but all the things that we experience in our daily life are products of history. And the governments and the militaries are obviously big factors in that. So diving into the individual men who were Freemasons and influential leaders and decision makers and historical turning points gives us an opportunity to kind of analyze those relationships and the growth and knowledge in a way I think that's beneficial.
And how it affected Freemasonry moving forward. Because when you think about like those military leaders, they obviously brought that mindset, that esprit de corps, as we referred to it in the Air Force, with them into their lodges, and that created the environments that lodges flourished in. So it's really not surprising to me, at least, the anecdotal things that you were talking about as well, that we're seeing kind of a resurgence in the military members coming to lodges and wanting to be part of something like Freemasonry.
Well, with American Freemasonry specifically, I'm not a Prince Hall expert on their past, but someone told me one time that Prince Hall was initiated by a military lodge from the British Army. And don't quote me on that. I don't know if it's factual or not, but
we'll research that for the next episode.
Yeah, for sure. But if that is the case, think about how profound that was to Freemasonry in the United States. And it's still impacting Freemasonry today. There's still states that are just now coming around to Prince Hall acceptance and recognition today, 2022.
Yeah. And still states that are resisting it. You know who you are.
Interestingly enough. So those all those interconnections and all those historical bright points that are connected to military personnel, Masons, I think gives us an opportunity to really learn about our craft, learn about our history for both of our nation and the world. And then through the lessons that are learned or through the relationships that are made, really learn about ourselves. One of the things that happens often with Evve and I is when we gather after lodge for our
fraternal libations.
Yeah, fraternal libations are spreading the mortar, if you will, is that, we end up going off on a rabbit hole of stories of things we've experienced about our military time, and then comparing the Air Force to the Marines and the Navy and whoever else may be at the table with us.
Right.
We have a brother in our lodge who just came down from Canada and he was in the Canadian Army. And so that's a real interesting counterpoint to our stories and discussions often.
Yeah.
So
we're lucky to have and we've got a couple of other members of our lodge that are also military or former military members as well. So it's we've got a really eclectic group, and we're very fortunate to have as many veterans in our lodge as we do. I'm honestly surprised we don't have any active duty folks with as many military installations as are in and around the DFW area. We don't see more active duty folks here, but it is what it is.
Hey, I've often wondered about that, and I wanted to ask somebody who obviously had more time in the craft than I do that may know, what may be the cause of that. But being in Fort Worth, we are lodge saturated here, so that's true. Probably a factor.
And I was actually going to mention that you were talking about earlier, that you grew up born just a few miles or a few blocks from here. You're from Fort Worth, but yet, you ended up at Fort Worth Lodge, despite the fact you don't actually live in Fort Worth.
No, yeah. I'm a few miles south of town. And that was something I went kind of around and around with myself. Because obviously it'd be more convenient to join a lodge in the city where I live. You can walk there from my house. But a big part of Masonry, I think, for those who aren't Masons to understand is that not only do you have to fit into Masonry personally, but your lodge has to be a good fit for you and you have to be a good fit for your lodge. So it's really important that you meet the people, spend time with them, which is why our process is the way it is, and find out how you're going to mesh. We are fortunate, I think, beyond measure that there is an excellent synergy, if you will, between the core members of the lodge who are always around and always doing things and keeping in contact. I don't know, call it a blessing or whatever you want, but it's
especially recently. I think considering recent events, it's been quite a blessing. Truly.
So yeah, but so I had to deal with an internal battle about where I was going to end up. There was a couple options. I had one family friend who was a Mason, because I'm not a legacy at all. There's that I know of, no members of my family that are Masons. I had one family friend who was going to recommend me for the craft, and he was pointing me more towards Arlington Lodge, oddly enough, even though I live in Burleson. And so I just kind of had to do some research and then go and meet some people and find where I fit. And then once I came here and met the Brothers of Fort Worth Lodge and really thought through the fact that, this is my hometown. This is Fort Worth is part of who I am. That's where I belong. Yeah. So,
well, you and I started coming up to the lodge at roughly about the same time, I think, because I had moved to Fort Worth and came up here. And I remember kind of the first times that I came up here and hung out with the lodge, you were here. And I didn't know if you were a member or not at that point, because I was still, coming up and meeting the lodge and getting ready to affiliate from my lodge and where I moved from. So you and I kind of met each other kind of early on in the process of your process. And it was after I got to know everybody in here that I realized that you were still a candidate for the mysteries and still waiting for a petition.
Yes. If I remember right, yeah, I think I had not taken any steps other than hanging out at the table outside.
Yeah, because I think it was the first couple of meetings. There were probably 4 or 5 of the guys. And that was when it was a much smaller group too. It was, I think, you and Greg and a couple, maybe 2 other people. It's been so long. It feels like it's been a lifetime ago.
It really does, especially through the pandemic. It seems like
there's this 2-year window where we just kind of things that
disappeared.
Yeah, a black hole of time.
I think it was me and 2 other folks, because that was right before the other group that's kind of my class showed up with about 6 people.
Yeah, because we had that huge group come through all at kind of once, and we were cranking out degrees like crazy for you guys. So, well, I guess I'll introduce myself. My name is Evve Kuykendall. I am a Master Mason here at Fort Worth 148, the senior deacon for the lodge. I have served in line for a couple of years now, and hope to continue serving my lodge in whatever capacity they need. I was raised at St. John's 51 in beautiful, scenic McKinney, Texas. Shout out to all my brothers out there at St. John's 51, a great group of guys out there doing some great masonry out there. If you haven't had their Easter barbecue special meats that they do, you need to check it out. They are doing that and doing great work out there, fundraising. So help them out if you see one of them. I moved here to Fort Worth to accept a job and kind of change up my life a little bit, and started looking around. I used to live across the bridge from the temple. And so whenever I was looking for lodges, there was a lodge at the temple. They had a website that gave me plenty of information, and I was like, I'll go check them out. I came up here and hung out at the stated meeting and met some great guys. I came back the next stated meeting, and 2 people remembered my name. And I was like, this is the lodge that I'm going to be at, because people care about visitors. They remember your name and they remember your face, and they're going to come up and say hello to you. And you're not just an invisible person, despite the fact that this is a pretty big lodge. And pre-pandemic, it was probably even, more members were active at that point. We're starting to get back to that point now, but it was quite a bit larger of stated meetings back then. In terms of my military background, I joined the United States Air Force in 1999, August of 1999. So I got to go to basic training on August, I think 17th was my first day, when it was 106 degrees in sunny San Antonio. And that was quite a wake-up call for a basic trainee. to deal with in terms of heat. But as Sean will tell you, it's kind of a joke because like they kind of coddled us. I'm not going to lie, compared to what I've heard from Sean's basic training experience. Mine was quite a different one. I had an AFSC, an Air Force specialty code of 1C171, which is air traffic control supervisor. I started off as an air traffic controller, was stationed for my tech school at Biloxi, Mississippi, along the beautiful Gulf Coast. I was stationed in San Antonio, Texas, and did basically my entire service there. I was on schedule to do some deployments, but I got promoted, and the Air Force doesn't like to send people who have been promoted into a role that is for a lower ranking position. So I was kind of promoted out of every deployment that I needed to do. And I was kind of sad about that, actually, because I wouldn't have minded doing some of the deployments. During that time, 9/11 obviously happened. And as an air traffic controller, I got a front row seat to exactly what was going on. Although I didn't know what was going on at the time, we figured it out real quickly. And so I got to see how some really nefarious people got to use our laws and our air traffic system against us. And it was kind of fascinating to see the way in which it responded, and how the military responded, and what happened. If you ever see me out having a beer with me, ask me about it someday, and I'll tell you some funny stories about how all that worked. I got to clear Air Force One to land, so I got to see the Secret Service agents up in the tower cab with me, telling me that they're going to shoot me if I don't do what I'm told to do, which was kind of a depends undergarment moment, if I do say so myself. I served until 2005, whenever my service contract came up, and I decided that I did not want to reenlist, and decided to go out into the private sector, where I was confronted with the reality that the military is not like the private sector, and I missed it a lot. I missed the camaraderie. I missed the structure. I missed the people. I missed the drive for excellence. That's probably one of the things that most irritates me now about the civilian world, is the rush towards mediocrity. And the military, in so many ways, at least in the Air Force, and I'm sure you would say this about the Marines, that there is this push to be the best you can be at whatever it is that you are endeavoring to do. And it doesn't always, in a bureaucracy, it doesn't always feel like it's the most efficient thing. But I mean, on a personal level, I always felt like there was this push to, people encouraged you to be the best. There was never this kind of drive towards mediocrity. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And I think it's a really interesting kind of point about military service, and even becoming a Mason. If you think about who you are and what you are, the biggest realization for me in the private sector, and I'm still it's over 10 years later and I'm still adjusting. The biggest realization is that the average person seems to just want to have their job, versus especially when you just the name says it alone, when you become a Marine, right? You are a Marine. That's not only what you do, that is just your entire identity, versus this is just what I do, not who I am mentality for a civilian.
It's a very kind of, it sounds very much like when you become a Mason, it's
right.
You become a Mason. You're not a Mason, you become a Mason.
Yeah. This is,
it's an ontological change in who you are and what you are.
Yeah, for sure. And it's definitely, I would agree. It's like I said, 10 years in, and there's still days when I go, wait a minute, what? But the fact that not everybody runs around with that focus and attention on perfecting their self. And some people do. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of like consummate professionals in the world who do that, but the average Joe,
in Freemasonry, you encounter that probably a lot more than in just regular life.
For sure. You know, and in Freemasonry, you have those guys that find their niche in the craft. You know, that's one of the reasons we split our podcast into a couple different topic points, is that we've got some guys that have their niche in the craft and they just get it and they go for that with all they have and they want to learn. You know, Brother Gabe, our worshipful master, and Billy, who do the esoteric part of our podcast. If I ever even think I might have a question, like, you know, I better ask them. I better text them and find out, you know,
right.
Get the insight, because they have forgotten more than I'll probably ever know about that side of Freemasonry. That's truth to be sure. So, but yeah, and that's really interesting. Yeah,
it's pretty amazing how to me, from my perspective, how Freemasonry really mimics in many ways my military experience. That there's this collaborative effort to make people better, to like everybody is working towards making Sean a better man and a better Mason. And everybody in this lodge is working towards making me a better man and a better Mason. We are all working to make each other better and hold each other accountable for that. And at the same time, celebrating each other's victories and the big steps that we take, recognizing that when one person wins, that doesn't mean another person in the lodge loses. So if Sean, you know, does something great or gets a great job or has a kid or whatever, like it's everybody comes together and celebrates him, not because we feel like we have to, but because we want to see him excel and be the best at everything he can be.
Yeah. And it's reminiscent to me. I don't know how you guys do it, but every time there's a promotion or an awards ceremony in the Marines, especially in the grunts and the infantry, the combat arms, like it's a big deal. You know, we held on to the things that kind of maybe step over into the hazing line longer, and still hold on to some of them than a lot of other services, because of that pride in who we are and what we're doing and celebrating our accomplishments together. You know, when you think of like, back to relating it to the civilian world, you think of like the employee of the month award versus some sort of award of the military. We have Marine of the Quarter. You know, in each unit we'll have a Marine of the Quarter, and the difference in the way that goes down is kind of a.
Yeah, that's why I remember being, you know, there were plenty of people who were put up for Airman of the Quarter, NCO of the Quarter, you know, at the squadron level and at the group level and all sorts of things at the base level and all that stuff. And the funny thing is, I don't remember a single person ever thinking that the person who was awarded that particular, you know, award or decoration or whatever it was, no one ever felt like that they lost something because of. They all celebrated the fact that this person received recognition for a lot of hard work that they put in. There was never this sense that I've lost out as an airman because this person got Airman of the Quarter or Airman of the Year or whatever. And I feel like that's also kind of what I feel here in Freemasonry, that there's never this sense that when one person gets something or achieves something, that I've somehow lost out on it. Does that kind of make sense? I've got this idea in my head about what I'm feeling and thinking about it, but it's hard for me to articulate it in a way that kind of makes sense to, I think, somebody who hasn't been in the military.
I think that's actually an interesting point. I think it relates to society as a whole, kind of going back to, you know, the youth looking for something these days. I think it's true. I think that
like there's a finite amount of victory out there, and if somebody else gets some victory, I've lost my portion.
Right.
And I don't feel like that's not how Freemasonry worked, and that wasn't my experience in the military.
So I would say that comes from a level of personal maturity. And I think obviously with the craft, you know, we're always working on personal growth. And I think in the military, sometimes personal growth is encouraged, sometimes it's forced upon you. But I think that being a part of those things and having those experiences gives you that level of maturity to understand that celebrating somebody else's victories or them making it doesn't mean you're not making it. And then counterpoint that to society as a whole now, once again, totally anecdotally, but you see people acting out. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that description, but it's the thing that comes to mind. Just acting out more about what they don't have or what they haven't done, versus, celebrating together what people have done and working everyone towards being better.
Right.
But it's interesting. We could probably have
there's probably a topic out there for a future podcast about that subject.
That may be one we want to collaborate with
the esoteric guys on.
Right.
Because that is an interesting function, and it would be interesting to have two military guys talking to two guys who haven't been in the military about it, who are just I say that like who are Masons who haven't had a veteran experience, and their perspective is probably going to be a little bit different than ours on this. I think maybe not as different as we might suspect. I think that they will probably see many of the trends in our society that we pointed out here.
Yeah. And I think that moving forward, that's going to be one of the kind of cool things that we may be able to come up with, is, being that we're veterans and we're going to try to talk to as many veterans or veterans' children, brothers that we can, is identifying those kind of perspectives that we all may have that somebody else may not have. And finding the things that we may be pointed. I know with Gabe and Billy, I think on a couple of occasions, like you and I have had a certain perspective and they've had a certain perspective, and our perspectives are kind of generally pointed in the same direction, but coming from different places.
Right. Our destination is the same, but our route getting there is completely different.
And that's been a really interesting learning moment, for a lot of reasons, personal growth, and then developing the brotherhood as well, which, in the end, that's the goal for me every day, is that I want to improve myself. And in so doing, I want to strengthen the bonds I have with the people that I've met here. The biggest reason that I finally came to Masonry is that there was something missing from my time in the military. And at first I couldn't even identify exactly what it was, right? You hear the stories all the time about veterans being adrenaline junkies or turning to substance abuse or, ending up homeless even, because there's a void. There's something that we had in our lives that goes away, and it's a little bit abstract and hard to identify. And I looked for it in a lot of places and didn't find it. And then each time you don't find it, you feel a level of failure that kind of has negative consequences. But
yeah, it goes beyond disappointment. It has like real consequences. It's like being kind of hurt.
But I think Masonry helped me identify what it was and gain it. And for me, individually, what it was is that level of bond with a group of people, for us men, but that doesn't necessarily have to be so, but it's a level of trust where we can get together like we do, and talk about things. And I don't have to tiptoe at all.
You don't have to self-censor when you're around people that you can trust.
Self-censor. That's a good way to put it. And I feel like as a veteran, especially a combat veteran, I have to self-censor all the time around civilians. Like, just because our sense of veterans as a whole have really morbid sense of humor, Marines especially so, and combat veteran Marines
even more so.
It's unbelievable. The things that we find funny, most people, like
our ability to offend people is on a different level.
Without even intending.
Without even intending, we can absolutely offend people at the drop of a hat and have the best of intentions. But that's still offend people.
But that's the best part, when you and I can be sitting in our chairs at lodge and looking across the room at each other with that knowing face of, oh yeah. from some joke or some morbid idea that we get a laugh out of. Which is why we're here, right? That's, to find those things and identify and maybe help explain to the non-military Mason or non-Mason to understand. But filling that void, that camaraderie, that level of trust was what I was looking for that I didn't know about, and what I found and I can identify now.
All right. Well, that's why I think that this podcast is going to be really great. And during this podcast, we're really going to focus on, we're going to have segments periodically where we talk about a specific Mason who was involved in the military. We're going to be talking about the things that are going on today and, in the past, and how those things have rippled forward in history, how the pebble that our founders and Freemasons, even before the founding, dropped into the pebble of history, have rippled forward in today's Freemasonic experience. And so I think we're going to have a lot of fun on this podcast. And I hope you'll join us for that journey. If you have any questions or comments, you can absolutely reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to talk about. If there's a subject you want us to tackle or a question you have, we'll have a little Q&A session from time to time, and we'll discuss it. So if you have one of those questions and you want to send them to us, you can reach out to us directly at fortworth148@gmail.com. That's our email address. Feel free to shoot us an email with questions, comments, topics that you'd like us to tackle, or ideas. We're open, and we definitely want to take your thoughts into account when we're doing these podcasts. And if you want to check us out a little bit more, we have a website, fortworth148.org. That will give you our lodge website. And we've also got Masonicon coming up, Masonicon 2022 coming up later this year.
August. My first one, because last year was canceled for the pandemic. So
right.
I'm really excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, this year we're restarting Masonicon, and we're hoping that you will come out as listeners to join us for a great symposium. We got some great speakers lined up. I'm just waiting for the guys to drop the names, because I know that there's going to be a lot of interest, especially after the names of our speakers are dropped. We got a great lineup this year, and for coming out of the pandemic, it's going to be well worth the wait. So make sure you get your tickets. We've also got a festive board planned, so those tickets are limited. So if you're not sure if you want to attend it, make sure you get your tickets anyway, because once the tickets are gone, they are gone. It's going to be a shindig, that's for sure. There's going to be some great food. We've already got the meal planned. Not sure if it's been released yet, but I think the tickets for the festive board are live on the Fort Worth Masonicon website. Yes, I know they are live. I'm not sure if the food has been released yet. The menu. Oh, the menu is what I'm excited about. I know that the speaker who we have lined up for it is going to be great, but I'm not going to lie. As a foodie, I am looking forward to what they're serving. So make sure you check it out for Masonicon 2022. TexasMasonicon.org is the website. Check it out. Get your tickets. We hope to see you there. So until next time, gentlemen, my name is Evve Kuykendall.
My name is Sean Baun.
And we will see you next time on the Fort Worth Military Podcast.